There are 28 high-risk non-compliances that are on the propane compliance standard. And additionally, when we launched the compliance standard, which we're planning on launching on April 14th, just a few weeks away, we're also going to be launching what we call a pre-notification periodic inspection notification. So 30 days before your periodic inspection, we'll be sending you out a notification saying, hey, TSSA is going to be coming out to do your periodic inspection. And in that notification is going to be a link to the compliance standard to remind you, hey, these are the things that TSSA considers high risk. And that we see them on your periodic inspection. We're going to be returning, but also it allows you to correct those things before our inspection, so that you can get a clean inspection. Also, compliance standards are dynamic, right? They are going to be reviewed and revised. So that's really going to correlate with the code cycle. So the propane installation code is typically revised every 5 years. So you can expect that this compliance standard is going to be reviewed and looked at the same time when we're adopting a new code. We are adopting the propane code, I believe, this year. This is the 2025 code. And we've already made sure that it aligns with the compliance standard that we're about to roll out. So how are compliance standards developed, right? So TSSA has a list of what we call standard orders, which identifies non-compliances that we have actual standard orders for. And there's about 120 of them. So we actually risk assessed all of those non-compliances that are associated with periodic inspection. And so that risk assessment, what does it kind of look like? So for example, you need to hold an ROT or a certificate to transfer propane. So if that's identified non-compliance, would be a case of somebody's transferring propane that does not hold an ROT. What is the intermediate thing that can happen that can cause a problem? Somebody could overfill a cylinder, right? And then what would be the consequence? Hey, there would be a vapor release. So all of those things have probabilities, and in the risk assessment algorithm, it turns out a specific number for that particular non-compliance, right? So each one of those 110, 120 orders that we assessed ended up with an actual compliance score. And then what we do is what we call an inflection point analysis, right? And so you take the risk score of a non-compliance and how many times that it is issued. So risk score and the volume. And you get what you call an asymptotic chart, right? A graph. And where you have an inflection point where it flattens out at the top, and all of the orders that are under that inflection point are on the compliance standard. And typically they would represent about 90% of the risk associated with a facility, a propane facility. So at that point, we have a draft compliance standard, which we take to our executive team for approval. We don't go through all of the non-compliances, but we go through the methodology with them. Once we're satisfied internally, we took it out to an industry working group, which we held last November, December. And we went through how we developed it. We went through the actual non-compliances that are on the compliance standard with that working group. And their feedback was fairly positive. They had a few suggestions on the wording of orders and the time to comply in some cases, which we took back their feedback and we revised the compliance standard accordingly. So we reviewed and revised it based on that feedback. We finalized it, and here we are today, and we're proud to be in the process of implementing it. And one of the things that we do with compliance standards when we implement it is we have an information session, which is a webinar, which they're very thankful that you're attending today to hear about this. And we also train our inspectors prior to launch, which we've already done. So now we're going to talk about the actual non-compliances that are actually on the compliance standard. There's 28 of them that made the high risk category, and I'm going to go through them one by one. I'll try not, I tend to read a little bit fast, so I'm going to tend not to try to do that during this. So the first one, it typically to the left, you have the clause reference number, which typically is a code or a regulation reference. So the first one on the compliance standard is comply with clause 7.12.2 of the 149.2 code, which is the propane code, and ensure that access for firefighting personnel is provided to the site. So the first one is that access for the firefighting personnel as outlined in the code. The next one on the compliance standard is comply with clause 7.2.5 of the 149.2 code and ensure that all relief valve terminations are equipped with a loose fitting cap. So relief valve terminations have to be equipped with a loose fitting cap. The next one is comply with clause 7.19.1.7 of the 149.2 code and ensure the container refill center is equipped with a clearly identified and readily accessible means to shut off the propane system and electrical power to the propane pump and propane dispenser during an emergency. So basically, that's a shutdown system when you have an emergency, and make sure it's readily accessible. The next one is comply with clause 5.3.3 of the 149.2 code and remove any readily ignitable materials within 10 feet, 3 meters of any propane storage container. The next one is comply with clause 6.1.8 of the 149.2 code and ensure that cylinders are stored in such a way that the relief valve is in direct communication with the vapor space. So make sure the cylinders are upright. And the next one is a very important one. We all know that risk and safety management plans were introduced back in 2010. So this is comply with section 3.10.1D of the propane regulation and ensure the facility is operated in accordance with the risk and safety management plan. So our inspectors, when they come to site, they're going to be opening up the RSMP. They're going to be looking at the additional mitigations and making sure that they're in place, whether it happens to be training, sprinklers, whatever it happens to be as part of your risk and safety management plan. The next one is comply with section 27.9A of the propane regulation and ensure employees are trained in emergency procedures at the facility and records of proof of training are made available for review. So we're going to want to see the training records when we come to the site. And that's one of the advantages of us sending out a pre-notification to you and letting you know 30 days in advance so you can have these records available. The next one is comply with section 6.1 of the propane regulation and cease and desist from handling propane without being a holder of a certificate or ROT for the purpose. So that was the example I used on how we did the risk assessment. So you need to have your ROT. You need to have an ROT to transfer propane. Comply with clause 7.22.4 of the propane code and develop and or maintain operating procedures appropriate for the facility, taking into account the items detailed in this clause as applicable, right? So you need to have your operating procedures developed and maintained. The next one is comply with 7.19.2 of the 149.2 code and ensure that fencing is compliant with clause 6.5.2 or 6.5.3 of the 149.2 code. The next one is comply with clause 7.19.3A of the 149.2 code and ensure that all required equipment is located inside the cabinet when doors are closed. And the next one on this particular slide is comply with 5.3.2 of the 149.2 code and ensure that protection is provided to the identified propane containers by posts or guardrails as specified. So that's your vehicle protection. The next one is comply with clause 7.9.5 of the 149.2 code and ensure that all relief vent extends vertically upwards, unobstructed to the outdoors with no impingement on the other tank. So you want all the vent terminating outdoors. Comply with clause 7.19.3b of the 149.2 code and ensure that the internal safety valve is closed when the filling cabinet door is closed. So I have to have your internal safety valve closed when the cabinet door is closed as well. Again, this is one to do with the RSMP that gets written up not fairly frequently, but does get written up. Comply with section 3.17 of the propane regulation and ensure that the facility does not contain propane storage in excess of that provided under the risk and safety management plan estimated to TSSA. So that also includes your portable storage. You can only have a certain amount. The next one is comply with 29.1 of the propane regulation and provide an inspection report that's not more than 1 year old, detailing that an inspection of the facility has been conducted by an authorized person to ensure the site is in compliance with the regulation. So that's your annual inspection by the fuel distributor. The next one is comply with section or clause 7.17.1 of the 149.2 code and ensure that container filling locations with provision for container storage are not located less than A, 10 feet 3 meters from any tank, B, 25 feet 7.5 meters from a property line, and C, 25 feet 7.5 meters from any source of ignition. So that's your container filling location. It has to meet those distance requirements. The next one is comply with clause 5.8.3 of the 149.2 code and ensure that the discharge from a hydrostatic relief valve is directed away from any propane container. The next two are code adoption document references. And it is comply with clause 1.6 of the propane code adoption document and ensure that the 10-year propane tank inspection is conducted by an authorized person and the inspection record is retained. So that's your 10-year inspection of the tank. The next one is for the relief valve. So comply with clause 1.7 of the propane code adoption document and ensure that the 5-year tank pressure relief valve inspection is conducted by an authorized person, and the inspection record is retained as detailed in the clause. The next one is comply with clause 5.9 of the 149.2 code and ensure that any hose that is showing signs of wear, deterioration, or other damage is replaced as soon as a defect is detected in accordance with clause 6.20.4 of the 149.1 code. So basically, anytime you see wear on your hose, you should be replacing it immediately. And the last one on this slide is comply with 4.2.1 of the 149.2 code and ensure that any appliance, accessory, component, equipment, or material used in an installation is approved for that specific purpose for which it is employed. So that's your typical approval requirement for any equipment at the plant. And this is the last slide of non-compliances. Comply with clause 7.3.5 of the 149.2 code and equip the piping with an emergency shutoff valve and or back check valve as specified. The next one is comply with clause 5.6.1 of the 149.2 code and ensure that hydrostatic relief valves are installed in any liquid propane system whenever liquid propane can be contained or trapped due to a valve closure. The next one is comply with clause 7.20.9 of the 149.2 code and ensure that the remote dispenser nozzle hose breakaway coupling is installed. So you want to make sure that breakaway coupling is there in working order. And comply with 7.4.1 of the 149.2 code and equip each tank opening with a properly sized excess flow valve or back check valve. And comply with clause 7.6.1 of the 149.2 code and ensure that a liquid level gauge is installed for the tank. And the last one that's on the 28 list, which is probably from TSSA's point of view, one of the most important ones, is comply with section 13(1) of the propane regulation and ensure your facility is licensed to operate. We're hoping we never see that particular one. We do have, as you probably know, a lapsed authorization program. So if you let your license lapse, TSSA does follow up on it by reaching out to the license holder. And then if need be, we dispatch an inspector. So those are your 28 orders that are on the compliance standard. That is the technical portion of the presentation. It's a lot of material to digest. Again, this compliance standard is on our website, and I believe that Patrick is going to put the link, give you the link after we finish the webinar. And so we're going to be implementing this at TSSA on April 14th. Along with the notification letter for your upcoming periodic inspection. So 30 days before your periodic inspection, you get notification of such. There will be a link to the compliance standard, and please go through that link and make sure that you've dealt with all of those, so you can get a clean inspection report and operate a safe facility. So at this time, if people have questions, Mike and I'd be happy to take them.
Hi, Sandra. We do have some questions in the Q&A. The first question states, will the orders be available to us by email?
Do you mean the inspect? Okay, so if you're talking about the compliance standard itself, it's on our website. And so when you get your pre-notification letter for your periodic inspection, and will be a link in that a notification to the compliance standard, so you can take a look at it. It is on our website. As part of this webinar, we will be sending out the link to that to the compliance standard, so you'll have it available to you.
Thank you, Sandra. The next question is, compliance standards posted on the TSSA website do not reference the propane clauses. Any particular reason for that?
The reason for it was actually to make it in simple layman's terms. We are trying to make it as friendly as possible. If that's a feedback that people would like to see the clause number, I don't think we'd have a problem updating it. We did that simply to try to make it easier to read, more friendly and more user friendly. But I can see why. I can see the advantage of actually having the specific reference beside it. So,
thank you. The next question is the intent to provide these data points annually to industry to provide safety focuses to address high non-compliance corrective focus?
Can you repeat that, Danielle? Sorry.
Is the intent to provide these data points annually to industry to provide safety focuses to address high non-compliance corrective focus?
The point of having the compliance standard is that industry themselves can see what are high rated. So I would see this as something that you want to do continuously. Like, so if I operated a facility and I saw one of these 28 things, I would want to address it immediately. Right.
To add to that, TSSA does provide safety data annually, and we would be reporting on these particular the compliance standards, the outcome of the compliance standards, once we have sufficient data to report on it. So we're starting the exercise now. April 14th, it'll begin, and we will collect data and report on it as we start to obtain data on the compliance rate against the compliance standard. The next question is, if renewing licenses annually, will we be having a periodic inspection?
Right now, the periodic inspections, Mike, you may know this better than I do. I think they range from 1 year to 3 years, Mike. I'm not sure of the frequency off the top of my head.
That's correct. 1 year to 3 years based on risk.
Based on risk. So if you're looked at as being a more risky facility, that you've had incidents or non-compliances or things of that nature associated with it, you may be on a 1 year cycle, or you may be on a 3 year cycle.
Thank you, Sandra. The next question is, what is the major difference / changes from the previous rules and regulations?
To be honest with you, I don't know off the top of my head. I think that, you know, some of the orders, and Mike, you may know this better than I do, some of the non-compliances that were rated high have probably been moved to medium or low, and some things that have been rated, you know, we did a wholesale risk assessment of all of the orders using incident history, using inspection history, et cetera. And so I don't know specifically what how many high risk orders we had before compared to now, but maybe Mike, you do propane inspections, maybe you might be better to answer that than myself.
So the amount of high risk orders has gone down with the new compliance standards. So there's not as many that are going to account against the facility.
Okay.
Sorry, I was saying thank you. If I encourage you, if you haven't received, you know, an adequate response, or you have a follow-up question, please do type it into the chat, and the team here will be happy to answer it for you. The next question is, will notification of inspections be communicated through the TSSA portal or a direct email? I can take that one, Sandra. It will be sent to your email, the email address, the primary email address associated with your account, your TSSA account. So we encourage you, if you don't have that information up to date, please do sign on to the portal, make sure your email address is up to date, and that's where the pre-periodic notification will be sent. We send it out indicating a 30-day time frame for you for your periodic inspection. So I encourage you to go online and make sure your email address is up to date. Is there an announcement that I can send to our members?
I'll take that back to communications. There should be an announcement on our website, right? So that I know the compliance standard is on our website. I believe it says it's being launched on April 14th.
Yes, and I think there are some industry communications as part of the plan. So they will be sent to members that are part of our database. So we can also ensure that we'll take that back as well to confirm that they are planned. Next question is, a number of orders refer to design and controls that would be looked at after licensing, liquid level gauges, for instance.
Yeah, I mean and I'll defer to Mike for that answer.
So a lot of the high risk that we are looking at are generally based on the original engineering. We're just validating that they are still on site and operable.
If you have a follow-up question, please do type it into the chat. Can I ask a question regarding the license / renewal?
Sure.
Of license in this webinar? Absolutely, yes, go ahead.
Since this is an open webinar, feel free to ask other questions. If you have other questions, we're happy to try to answer them. Right.
There's a question here. We already have a visitation earlier this month. Do we still need to expect another visit with this new compliance standard?
No, your periodic inspection schedule will remain the same. So if you recently had a periodic inspection, your next one will be due based on the risk rating of your facility.
Just to clarify, is ROT no longer required?
No, an ROT is required to transfer propane, and an ROT is required to be assigned to the facility when you do your renewal.
Okay, next question. Sorry, again, if you have a follow-up question or need a clarification to your original question, please do type it into the chat, and I'll be happy to ask Sandra and Mike. I just renewed our propane license. When we got the initial license, we didn't have diesel at our location. but now we have diesel. Do I need to notify anyone, or do I need to renew my license?
What do you mean by you have diesel? Do you have diesel dispensing? Do you have diesel storage? Do you just store diesel, or do you actually store diesel and dispense diesel? Like,
We'll give this person a moment to respond back to your question. Is it okay if I ask the next one in the queue, Sandra?
sure.
Okay, the next one in the queue is any way I can get a PDF file of the slides so I can add to my code book.
I'll have to take that back to communications. Communications had indicated to us that they wanted to provide the link. So, and we will also take it back that somebody from the webinar also asked for the code clauses to be added. So that may suffice to what you want to do. So we'll take that back. But I think it makes some good sense to add the code clauses to what's posted on the website.
So we'll just give it maybe another minute or so.
Sure.
Just as I said that, are the facilities required to have the NBIC Part 2 inspection on hand?
Well, that's the tank inspection, right, Mike?
That's correct, yes.
So, I mean, you have to be able, can you repeat the question, Danielle? Do you expect to have?
Sure. Are the facilities required to have the NBIC Part 2 inspection on hand?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we're providing the compliance standard is that you can have the documents there for the inspector. I mean, if for some reason you don't, you can always email it to him afterwards, but it just makes it a lot easier. I mean, if you have it on hand, or if you have it electronically, where he can look it up on a computer when he's at the site as well. It just makes it a lot simpler, and that's one of the reasons we want to provide this in advance so that you can have that on hand.
Thank you, Sandra. The question from the person asking about diesel, he clarified his response. He said it's a diesel dispenser and the storage is about 4,000 liters.
So if you have it stored, if you have diesel dispensing, then you have to apply to get a liquid fuels license at that site as well. Right, and that would impact your propane, your probably your RSMP as well, depending on how big your facility is, right?
The person clarified to say no changes in emergency procedure. I don't know if that helps.
It's very it's difficult to answer that question without having some specifics, but you certainly would need to get a liquid fuels license, and it may affect your emergency response procedures. It's difficult to make that answer. I don't know, Mike, if you want to step in.
I would maybe recommend sending an email to our customer service department, who would then be able to direct it to the appropriate party that can really tailor the response to your particular circumstances. That might be a little bit easier.
And if this diesel is for their own personal vehicles and it's outside of the compound where the propane is stored, then it probably is not going to have any effect.
Yeah, and you wouldn't need a license.
No.
So again, yeah, I think we should just maybe ask this individual to send an email to our customer service department with the particulars of their scenario, and then we would be able to tailor the response directly to them, because it seems like there's a lot of if cases. So that would be my recommendation. The next question on here is TSSA planning on developing/publishing any guidelines that would help license holders to comply, for instance, access for firefighting personnel?
Oh, that's a requirement in the code, right? And so I would ask. I mean, I can take that back and ask our engineer that sits on that code committee to ask about that. But right now we don't have any plans to do so. It's simply a requirement in the propane code. Mike, do you know the requirement specifically? Is there more detail to it?
Not really. It's generally up to the local fire department when they do their inspection.
Okay.
We have a couple people that have may be having some technical issues. I encourage you to please chat directly with the facilitator of this meeting by using the chat button. They can help you troubleshoot any of the technical issues that you may be having. The next question is there were some audio issues, but they're asking, was the NVIC inspection not removed from the compliance standard?
It is in the compliance standard.
What is the percentage of compliance in your propane audits across the province?
I don't know that off the top of my head, Mike. Do you? I'd have to look at our last annual report.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that across the province right now.
Yeah, I mean, it would be in our annual report. I just don't know off the top of my head. And our annual reports are on our website.
Why has Gary indicated twice to the CPA that the NVIC inspection will be removed?
I can take that and talk to Gary about it. So. If it does get removed, then it would come off the compliance standard, but I'm not aware of that, but I'm happy to take it back and talk to Gary about it.
It is also supposed to be removed from the CAD. That would be the trigger. So if it is removed from the CAD, as Sandra said, we would reassess the compliance standard to ensure that the compliance standards remains consistent with the current rules.
Yeah.
As Sandra indicated, she will take that back to Gary. If there is an indication that it's going to be removed from the CAD, we will reassess.
Yeah.
Okay. The NBIC issue will be readdressed at the Propane Advisory Council, and more information disseminated is what one of the participants has
Okay.
indicated on here.
Okay.
If there are any other questions, we encourage you to please put them in the Q&A, and I would be more than happy to raise it with our experts on the call.
Okay, well, I don't know anything else coming up, Danielle?
I am not seeing any other questions at the moment. I think we can adjourn.
Yep. Anyways, on behalf of Danielle and Mike and myself, I want to thank everybody who participated. We'll take some of your questions back. We have some follow-up information, and really appreciate your time today and allowing us to share this information with you. Thank you so much.